my name is Irene, and in this video, we are going to be talking about host-based families, specifically doors and windows. We're going to learn how they work, what are their limitations, and how to better understand how to get around those limitations. So let's get to it. Alright, so I am back in my little retail project here, and specifically what I want to do is I want to insert some doors and windows. I'll remove the windows. I don't actually need windows in this project in particular, but I will definitely keep the doors. So again, if we go back to the layout that I came up with, you may notice that I'm supposed to have two doors, one here that is 30 inches and one here that is 36 inches, right? So what I want to do here, I also don't want this section right here right now, so I'm going to delete it. Yes, awesome. So in my previous video, we talked about families and we talked about the different ways that you can source families. So in this case, I want to get doors. Now, the quick key for the door command is DR, and that's going to bring the door command. And you may notice that your Revit project comes by default with one family, which is the single flush, and several types. Now, this is going to be very common with doors and windows, and usually the kind of things that are standardized, right? Like you don't go to Home Depot and say, yes, may I have a door that is 26.5 inches wide? No, you go to Home Depot, you see the catalog of doors, and then you say, I want this one, right? So this is why you're going to see that usually with something like doors and windows, you're going to be working with standard sizes. So you have 30, 32, 36, and then you also have the heights. So 80 and 84 are the standard heights. Now, I could go with these doors. I think I'm probably going to go with them, but I just want to quickly show you that there are other options. So again, as I discussed in my family videos, you could source for a different family. So I could go to insert and then I can go here. Again, I'm always going to go, if I'm working with Revit families, I'm always going to go to the cloud base. It's just easier. And if I come back here to my results, let's say that I want to work with Imperial. And if I come here, you're going to see that we have a door section. We have commercial doors, hardware. So this would be like handles, knobs, that kind of stuff. And then we have residential doors. Obviously, this is a commercial space, so we would go with commercial doors. Now, the differences in these cases are going to be either in the construction of the door. Maybe it's like the thickness of the panel. Maybe it's the material of the trim. But in this case, a door is a door is a door. If you wanted to use the single flush, you can use the single flush. We have here the door passage single flush, and then we have door passage single flush double acting. So that means that it's a door that opens in and out. I don't really want that. I don't think that would work really well with what I have. Oh, but maybe I want a double door or even one of these ones for the storage, so that way I can expand it even more if I need to. So you know what? Let's do that. Let's say I'm going to select this guy and I'm going to select this guy, and I'm going to bring both of them in. And now what you're going to notice with these guys is that because you have family, and then this is telling me basically that this family comes with several types. And this is something that I really like about Revit, which is that when you have a family that has a lot of types, based on how the family was modeled, Revit will actually give you the option of choosing which versions you want to bring in. Because otherwise, like, look at how many versions of these door I have. I don't want to bring all of them. That would make my file unnecessarily heavy. So, for example, in this case here, I think this is the single flush. Oh, it's not letting me stretch it. I think this is the single one. So what I want to say is that I want the 30 inches and I want the 7 feet height. So we're going to go with this. And then just for funsies, let's say that I also want 36 by 7. So I'm going to hold control to add these two to my selection. And then I'm going to say, okay, there you go. So that's loading my door type. And if I go back here to DR for door, you're going to see that now I have my different door types. So it has brought my 30 by 84, 36 by 84. And then this one, what it's doing here is that if you're not sure what you're looking at in terms of dimensions, because it's like, what is this 54? Remember, you can select the family, and then you're going to see that if you go to edit type, it's going to tell you what is the panel. See, so the large panel is 36 inches, and then the little panel is going to be whatever is left. So that's exactly what I want to know. Okay. Now, this is where things get interesting. So let's say that I want to put these like the bathroom door. So you're going to see that if I move my cursor into the screen, I'm getting it's telling me like, no, you cannot do it. So this is what we refer to as host-based families. This means that this family cannot be placed on its own. This family has to be placed within some other geometry, within some other family. Okay? And it kind of makes sense because if you think about it, you never just have a door floating in the middle of like anything, unless it's the doors from Zuzume or like Scott Pilgrim. Otherwise, a door is always on a wall to basically define that opening, right? You make a hole in the wall and then you finish it with a door or you finish it with a window. So basically, logically, this makes sense, but it can be a little bit frustrating because you're going to see that there is more host-based families than just doors. For example, very commonly, ceiling lights, a lot of them are going to be ceiling based, which means that if you don't have a ceiling, you cannot have that light. This is also why in this exercise, I placed this one ceiling across the entire project, regardless of whether it would be realistic for something like this to exist in a project, because it's going to make it much easier when it comes to placing our lighting fixtures. Now, if you're getting this error message, how can you tell what the problem is, like what the solution is? Well, remember, on the bottom left corner, you have your cheat sheet. And if I look down on my bottom left corner, it's telling me that I need to click on a wall to place the door. So that is how you're going to know who is the host for the family. So you can see that in this case, it's a wall. And you're going to see that as soon as I hover over a wall, bam, now it lets me go. 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 Any wall will work. Now, be careful. Technically speaking, you can put a door in a curtain wall, but it looks awful. Like, I'm going to click here and show you just so you can see like all of that orange is Revit telling me that I have sinned. And this looks so gross. This is, I mean, look, I've seen this in real life, so I know that it is possible, but I don't like it. So I'm going to pretend that that's not possible. So I'm going to go back DR. So again, you have to be on a wall. Then the other thing that you can do is, for example, see how now my door is opening to the outside? If I want it to open to the inside, your door is going to be very sensitive to the position of your cursor. So see how now my cursor is on the right side of the wall? So Revit is understanding that as like, you want it to open to the outside. And if I want it to open to the inside, I'm just going to move my cursor, see? Bam, to the left. If, let's say, my hinges are on the wrong side, I want them on the right and they're on the left, or vice versa, you can press the space bar. And if I press space, it's going to flip my door. So see, you can put your door in all four directions, okay? Finally, the last thing that I would recommend is that you need to understand, when we're talking about a door's rough dimensions, what is it that you're actually talking about? So remember, when we are talking about a door dimension, really what you're talking about is the opening that your door panel is going to fill. So you can see here that with my placement, I am placing it so basically my opening is aligning with that. And you may notice that my arc of my swing of the door is not perfectly aligning, and that is just because of the position of where the line was initially drawn. But you can see that the beginning and end are matching perfectly, and that's all I care about. So I'm going to click to place my door, and bam. Now, this is what I really love about Revit doors. It doesn't just place the door, it also automatically creates the opening on the wall. So now I want to see inside of my building. So we can just continue hiding and unhiding things. Or the other thing that you can do is in your 3D view, you can turn on the section box. And this is going to basically allow me to create a little box that is going to basically allow me to slice in all three directions. There you go. See? So now I can see. See? So the really cool thing about door and window families in Revit is that they don't just place the door, they also create the cut. They also make the opening in the wall. So look at that door. She is beauty. She is grace. She is a little bit weirdly offset. So we're going to talk about how to fix that. But there is my door numero uno. And now we're going to do our door numero dos. So we're going to go DR. And let's say that I'm going to go, I think I wanted to do this one, 84. And I'm just going to put it beautiful. See? So that basically means that, like, you know, if they are storing something really big, they can just open the double one and put it in. It's a little bit overkill, not going to lie to you, but like, it's fine. So I'm going to click. And bam, my doors have been placed. Let's take a look. Wow, isn't she pretty? Okay, so now let's address the elephant in the room before I go crazy. See how it's like not perfectly aligned? Not perfectly aligned? That's gonna drive me crazy if I don't fix it. So this is the part where you have to be careful because the properties that I'm gonna show you now are not like door universal properties. Again, doors are families, and thus they are going to be subject to the variety of properties that we saw, for example, when we were working with furniture. Different doors have been modeled differently with different properties. So you have to do a little bit of detective work every time that you start working with a new family to figure out what things you can and cannot change of that family. So again, the way that we do this is we select the family, and first we're going to see what are instance properties, and then we're going to see what are type properties. And if it's not in any of these two, then it means that we cannot change it unless we go to edit the family. But in this case, it's going to be pretty straightforward. So if we look at here, I have my sill height. So my sill height is basically how high from the floor my door is. So for example, if I come here and I say 6 inches, enter, that's going to move my door 6 inches from the floor, which maybe it makes sense if, you know, like your store is in a place prone to flooding. But it doesn't make a lot of sense here, so I'm going to undo that. That looks a little bit crazy. More importantly, I really like the fact that you can change the swing angle on the door. Now, you may notice that my door is closed in the 3D view, but open in the floor plan view. So this is another thing that we're going to discuss later when it comes to creating our own custom families. And that is that you can basically create a family where the family looks entirely different in different views. So see, that opening, that swing angle is for this guy here. So if I come here and I say 45, it's going to show that my door is 45 degrees off. But again, in the 3D view, it is always showing as fully closed. So let's bring it back to 90. This is what we're looking at. Masonry inset. I can assure you that this little gap here is this little gap here. And let's test it out. If I make it 0, aha, fixed. And in fact, if I want to make it so like my trim is perfectly centered, I could come here and measure, for example, from this edge. Ooh, are you not gonna let me? It's not gonna let me pick this edge. So I would have to kind of guess, which I hate. I don't like. How much is this? This is ½ an inch. So let's say what happens if I give it an offset of minus ¼ of an inch? Ooh, minus ¼ of an inch. Yeah, that's working. Maybe minus ½ of an inch. Yes. Okay, that looks much better to me. So I can control these properties, but I need to understand where to look at. See, so for example, I could have also said I just don't want to have a masonry frame. And if I do that, that is basically going to, instead of just protruding, it's going to do more the classical wrap around the wall, which I really like. And then again, if I would have done something like bring it back to 0, then it's just going to ignore that because that only works if you have a masonry frame. I actually like this better. It's a little bit more realistic to the way that I would do a door. If I want to change other properties of my door, I can come here, and then here you can see things such as the width. This is the width of my opening. Height, this is the height of my open. Thickness, this is the thickness of my door panel. So see, right now it's 1 3/4, which is pretty standard, but let's say that I want to, I don't know, this is a safety door and it's 4 inches. That's ridiculous. But just to show you, if I click here, apply, yeah, it's going to tell me like you're crazy. That looks stupid. Sorry. I like to play with things. Undo. We don't want to do that. But yeah, so like if you have an understanding of like what is, and I really like the fact that usually these parameters are quite descriptive. Strike height, I think that is where the handle is. Let's see if we can confirm that. So if I come here and I go to edit type and I say 3/4 is a little bit high. So let's say we're going to make it 4, apply. That's my handle. 3/4 is a little bit high. I would like it to be 3 feet. Okay, perfect. I can also change the thickness of my masonry. So that is this trim, this little trim that we're getting here. Probably can see it here a little bit better. That's this guy here, masonry frame depth. So right now it's 5 3/4, almost 6 inches. So let's say I'm going to make it 1 foot, like 12 inches, just so we can really see what's going on here. If I go here, apply, that is going to change nothing. But maybe it's something that we see in the 3D view. I'm not quite seeing it. Let's see. If I undo, I'm not quite seeing this parameter. I am not seeing this parameter because if you remember, we turned off the masonry frame. So let's bring this guy back up for a second. And I'm just going to leave it like that. And now if I come here, so see, you can see that masonry frame. Now, if I come here and I say that I want this to be 12 inches, and I go apply, now you can see it. So basically that is how much this guy protrudes, okay? So the trickiest thing about working with families is really understanding what is it that you're looking at and how it's going to work, okay? So once you have that understanding, you can start editing your families however way you want. See, I can do the same thing. And this is why I usually like to go about to the library. For example, that single flush doesn't have a handle, which drives me a little bit insane. And also the trim is too simple. I don't like it. So see, now that I better understand what's going on, I can come here and say, okay, we don't want that. And I can come here and say that this is going to be a strike height of 3 feet. And okay, see? And now I have added my 2 doors. If you change your mind, let's say that I'm like, ooh, I don't want it to be this door anymore. One of the nicest things about families is that you don't need to delete the family and then insert it again. You can just replace it. So I could just come here, select this guy and say, well, I want it to be the 36 by 84. And it's just going to replace it. Now, here it's giving me an error because it's just telling me that with that change, my door is clipping into the wall and that it shouldn't do that. So remember, clipping geometry, bad. But I could also choose a different door type entirely, right? I could come here, this is 30 by 84. I could choose the 30 by 84 of the single flush, and that is going to work just fine. See? So if I select my single flush, you're going to see that it doesn't have as many options as it had with the other type, but it has more options here with my dimensions. So for example, I can choose my trim, which is this kind of like casing that we see here. Okay, so it's very important to understand that all families behave differently. You cannot just assume that like, oh, if we're working with doors, then I'm always going to have a trim. I'm always going to have width, depth, height. I'm always going to have a handle. They can be very, very different. The only thing that they have in common is that they are all constructed by my host, right? Windows are going to be exactly the same. Now, I don't really need a window in this project in particular, but I'm going to put one just for funsies, and then I'm going to delete it. So the quick key to Windows is WN, and you can find it here, N, and that's going to bring your windows. Now, by default, your Revit project should come with a fixed window, a double casement window, and a double hung. So basically the casement one opens like this, and the double hung opens like this. I'm gonna go with the fixed to begin with, and I'm just gonna go with the smallest one. Now, the biggest difference that you're gonna notice between the window and the door is that if you do your window in a 3D view, you get to decide the height. So if I click here, it's going to put this window that height, see, which is 5 and 6 and something, something, something. But if I put my window in a floor plan view, what you're going to see is that it's going to work with a default height of how much? 3 feet. So if I would want it to be lower, I can change this number. And then when I place my window, you're going to see that it's going to be at exactly 3 feet. Another thing that you may notice with the window is that it has like, see, the same way that with my door opening, I had kind of like left and right side. You also have the same thing with the window. Now, this thin line that you see there, that's actually your glass panel. And in general, windows, you're going to want the glass to be towards the facade side, towards the outside for waterproofing reasons. And if it's a acting window, depend on the brand and the type of window. Some windows open in, some windows open out. Again, there's flavor and variety in this world. But once your windows are placed, remember, these 2 windows are the same family and same type. So that means that any changes that I make here are going to be instance changes. And any changes that I do here are going to be instance changes. See? So for example, right now my height is 5. If I come here and I make it 6, boop, it's going to go up. But this is going to stay in place because these are instance parameters. Now, if I go here and I say edit type, you're going to see that I can change the height, the default sill height, the width, and the window insert. So this is basically where the window is on the wall. So basically, again, let me bring it here so we can see it a little bit better. So these 3/4 of an inch is basically telling me, okay, so from whatever this border is, it's counting 3/4 of an inch and then it's putting my glass there. So for example, if I come here and I say, I think that wall was like 6 inches or something. So let's say 3 inches, whatever. And I go here, apply, see? That has moved the position of my glass. Let's say 2 feels more reasonable. There you go. See, so that would basically put my glass in the middle of the wall. So again, different families are going to give you different options. Another thing that I want to highlight quickly is the fact that you may notice that in my floor plan, there is only 1 window. But when I go to my 3D view, I see 2 windows. So why is this happening? Well, remember that something like a floor plan is really a section. It's just a section that is cutting your building horizontally and then you're looking down. So what this is indicating to you is the fact that your cutting height is below where this window is. So basically you're cutting the cake that is your building and your window is above that threshold. So it's not showing. So there's 2 ways that you could fix this. Option 1, you can in the view. So I'm, for example, on my floor plan here, I could change my view range. So I'm on my floor plan view, under extends, view range, edit, and I could change this cut plane to higher. So if you remember, my window was at 6 feet. So I could come here and say, I don't know, 6.5 feet. And then you're going to see the top window, but you're not going to see the bottom window because we've changed where we're cutting it. So that isn't going to always work. So if that happens to you, the other thing that you can do is you can kind of create an exception on your view. The way that that is going to work is that you can go to your view, and that is going to be I think, under plan views. Yes, I think it's Ooh, is it plan region or area plan? I think it's plan region. Yes. So I'm going to do this as a rectangle, kind of guessing where my window is. It doesn't have to be super precise. We can change it later. And then see, basically this allows me to create an exception to my view range. So I can say that this is going to be my 6 feet height, 6'5", whatever. And I'm gonna go okay here, and there you have it. See, so now I can show both windows. If you don't want to see this little rectangle here, that's super fine. I think that by default this guy doesn't print, but to me it just bothers me in general. So you can right click and then just hide it, and now nobody needs to know. So you can see both of your windows in your floor plan, and you can see both of your windows in your 3D view. Pretty cool stuff. And with that, we have reached the end of this video. I hope you found that helpful. If you have any questions, by all means, feel free to add them in the comments. But otherwise, thank you very much for joining in. Thank you very much for sticking through, and I will see you in the next one. Have a good one. Bye.